Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 24 here with me, as always, Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. Joe, another week down. We're surviving parenthood, as we just talked about. We don't have to get too much into it, but some fun.
Yeah, as parents know, I hit like the 6-week mark with ours, and that could hit a little bit of a peak in terms of their nighttime angst and, randomness of wanting to feed more and this and this. But we've got a really good baby. We're lucky, knock on wood. He's been sleeping a lot. So I know you've had an older version 2.0 of what our baby is, and he's clearly on the size scale right where ours is, or our projections. Our DOM projections of his growth will be probably to that.
Yeah, you're seeing into your future. And ours has been good for the most part, but the last 2 nights, I don't know if it's sleep regression or if he's teething, but yeah, last night, I'm lucky if I got 4 hours. So we're powering through. We're on fumes.
We're here in spirit.
That we are. And little different today. We're actually going to open up right away with our Keyboard Warriors segment, brought to you by our good friends at Barrel Theory. We got a couple of wild topics. Of course, you all know Brock Faber. We're going to get into it. But other news, updates, and talking a little bit more about the blue line. And, of course, a great interview we've got teed up for you, as always, this week. A really fun one, I thought, Joe, with Paul Martin, former Gopher, long-time NHLer. Really fun one. But let's just get right into it here. Again, we've got Keyboard Warriors, our hot take segment every week, brought to you by our great friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. And I don't know how much more I can tell you guys. Check them out, Facebook, Instagram, see what events they have coming up, see what they have for new beers popping, what the food truck schedule is. But it's an incredible spot to check out, especially if you're going out there and checking out any of the St. Paul Saints games. But you all know, come hockey season, it's the absolute go-to, the must within, at least for one more year here, XL Energy Center. This week, we've got somehow people finding ways to not be thrilled about the Brock Faber deal. Dom Luszczyszyn, which I'm not even going to pretend that I'm confident that that's how his last name is pronounced. You would know better than me, Joe. He writes, the Wild smartly extend Brock Faber for his entire prime. It's a deal that should quickly become a steal as he entrenches himself as a legit number one defenseman. Shows the value curve and kind of what that compares to his average annual value. And we've got Justin Wiggins chiming in saying, are you not concerned with his second half last year? Joe, what say you?
Well, I'm more in the agreement of Dom than Justin in this one. Like, you could always say, well, it's a year too early, or why not wait till next year, approach extension. But this contract's going to age very, very well. The cap going up at 8.5. It is high for a guy playing 84 total NHL games. But even if the Brock Faber from last year remains consistent for a while, like that's still top pairing caliber defenseman, and he's only going to get better with age. And last part of last year was the team struggled, and also he had some broken ribs he was playing through. He played all 82 games, which is a really impressive feat for a first full season in the National Hockey League. So he's a guy who's a legit number one, a guy who told me he wants to win a Norris Trophy. I think he'll be in that discussion, and his contracts are lying there a little bit above Quinn Hughes, more than Heiskanen, a little bit under Cale Makar. So they believe he's going to fit in that universe. Maybe not Cale Makar is a unique, unicorn, I guess. But Brock Faber is a top pairing number one D for the next decade, and your potential future captain of the Minnesota Wild. I think that deal is going to age very well. So I'm not concerned, as Justin is, about the second half of last season. It was his rookie year. He's playing 6th most minutes of anybody in the National Hockey League as a rookie, and they're not garbage time minutes. These are like high leverage, most important, minutes of the game, and it gets top players in the league. And he has to get better at some areas, right? The penalty kill struggled, and he was on the ice for a good number of goals there in that respect. But he's healthy, and he's not even 22 years old yet. So I think this contract's gonna age well. And of the contracts that Bill Guerin signed, if we're complaining about the ones that are the 4 years for $4 million or this, like I think the ones he signed with Matt Boldy and the ones with Brock Faber, signing them early, take care of them through most of their primes, and create really good value on a team that desperately needs cap space. And doesn't always use it the right way. But I mean, Brock Faber is going to be one of the top defensemen in the league, in my opinion, over the end of his contract.
Yeah, and this is one too where like signing early makes a ton of sense because the value could fluctuate so much based on this upcoming season. Whereas, like we talked about with some of the other guys, like was the market really going to change that much if they had a good year? But with Brock, like if he had the worst season that we can project for him, maybe you shave $500,000 to $1 million off. But if he comes in and does exactly what he's done and takes another step, his team can come in and demand way more. I actually expected this to come in closer to like 9 or 9.5, so I'm thrilled with the 8.5. But like, if he balls out this year and he's somewhere on Norris ballots, he's probably commanding 8 figures, and we don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the cap's going to go up again after next year, and so the agents could argue a percentage of cap, which I don't necessarily always believe in that. Thing. You make the dollar amount you make and the value compared to other players, and you want to have enough cap room to build around it. I mean, Brock Faber, make no mistake, he wants to win a cup. He wants to bring it back to his hometown. Like that's his number one focus is winning. So 8.5, I think is a fair deal. I remember talking to Evan Longoria when I covered baseball back in the day, Tampa Bay Rays, and he signed like 20 games into his rookie season. Like I think it was like a 6 years, like 18 million with it, could go up to 44 million if he plays well. And one of the veteran players told him, never pass up your first fortune. So, never pass up your first big payday. And Brock Faber is going to live pretty comfortably, Maple Grove area-esque with $68 million over the next number of years. And it was funny. He was at the table. Bill Guerin was like, now you can afford that cabin you've been talking about. And asked him about it, and he was like, no, my grandparents have a cabin already, so I'll go there every week, no problem. You realize the upkeep on a place, if you own it, is different than if you could just have friends. Like the best friends to have are friends with cabin, friends with boats, right? So
that's fair. And I don't know, when we get him on here at some point this season, Joe, I'm gonna twist the knife. Like I need to know. Yeah, Brock, I know you don't need nice things. You're financially, responsible. If you had to spend $1 million of that check right now, what are you spending it on? Like, I just need to know, like, deep into the chasms of Brock Faber's dreams. Like, what might he spend money on for something that's impractical, or I'd even say dumb purchase?
Knowing him and just kind of how, I don't know whether cheesy is the wrong word, but he's just so down to earth and like humble and like mature for like a 21-year-old kid. Like, he would buy like a compound for his family. Like, he would have something for him, his parents, and his sister Paige and other sister. Like, he brought his parents to his signing yesterday in Bill Guerin's office, which is a cool video. If you saw it online, the Wild tweeted it out of Guerin and the parents were there, and he kind of gave them a little pep talk, like, hey, don't ever change. A lot of guys in the league say biggest mistake is trying to be something they're not. You don't need to be, in my instance, I think he's probably saying you don't need to put up 80 points a season, right? You don't need to change your game. You need to just be who you are. And he's one of those guys where I really don't think that money is going to change him all that much, which is the reason why you put this much investment and bet into a young player. Bill Guerin, when he played, you had to play a number of years to get that 10-year deal or 8-year deal, right? You had to be in your late 20s, and all of a sudden you're signing a guy until he's 37, right? And that's not their prime. And guys now, more and more, you're signing guys at their 21, 22, end of their bridge deal or before that, long term, and you're getting their, in theory, best value in their best years before it gets to that point where guys eventually who play 82 games and play 25 minutes a night, they're going to get banged up at some point. It's going to wear and tear. Look at Jared Spurgeon perfect example, like a warrior on the ice and everything you'd want, in a player at his size. But eventually those things catch up with you. So why not lock him up for when he's 21 to 30 versus 29 to 37?
100%. It's got to be noted too. Mama and Papa Faber are awesome people. Like, they are the Midwest couple through and through. Like, after games, his dad is out there chumming it up with everyone, drinking beers, playing pull tabs. Like, often I know our buddies over at 10K Takes are like hanging out with him and doing some drinking after the Wild games. And it is the most classic sense of Midwest couple where it's like, she's like, all right, time to go home. Let's leave. He's like, I just got one more beer. One more, then I'll go. Then I'll go. It's like the continued cycle of like, okay, one more, then I'll go. Like, come on, get out. It's awesome.
One more is a classic line that almost never works. But yeah, one more beer. I remember hanging with them at the Frozen Four with the Gophers in Tampa, and just them and Jay, the dad, wearing a Minnesota nice T-shirt, just all about the cause, and just just regular down to earth people. And you can see where he gets his personality and his character from, and his all shucks type nature. He's just grounded with good people, and he's still an NHL player. He'll have more money, and he'll get the highlights and all that stuff. But I think he's never going to forget where he came from. And
that makes me think, though. I know where Brock Faber is going to spend his money. It's either going into the NIL pool for Gopher hockey, or it's going into the hockey house just to beef it up and help with recruiting. Yeah. I'm all in. Yeah. Let's do it.
I'm sure Moscow's going to be calling them up and being like, Chipotle can only do so much in the NIL, man. Like Waggle Golf, and we love Waggle ourselves, can only do so much. Brock Faber maybe throw us a little bit, but they have a lot of illustrious alumni from there, as we'll talk to another one later today here with Paul Martin, arguably one of the better athletes to ever come from this Twin Cities area. Not quite Joe Mauer, but like other guys like in that category.
I think it's kind of them, though. Like, I think
those are the two guys, I think, right? Arguably,
that's
the two best athletes to come from here. So, but yeah, Brock Faber is big news yesterday, and got a chance to sit down with him. I wrote a story for the Athletics, so check that out. Some cool pictures of him as a 8-year-old kid in a Wild jersey with his dad. Just. You never know what life might bring you. I mean, that's something that people always talk about, waking up and wanting to play for your childhood team. And very rarely does it work out where you get to play for your childhood team, be a star for your childhood team, and your childhood team says, hey, we want to throw a big money truck at you and keep you forever. And he could be a Wild for life. He could be one of those guys. And it's very rare in this hockey world for a guy to spend the whole entire year with an organization. People are hoping Kirill Kaprizov's that guy too. So that's more on that. Stay tuned.
Yeah, more to come. We'll talk to you this time next year about that. All right. Well, let's talk then. We got into the forward depth chart last week with the Faber extension here. He's obviously locked in for some time. What's the outlook though for this year? Game one, like, what are we expecting for the D pairings?
I think it's going to go Faber and Rodin, Middleton, Spurgeon, and Chisholm and Bogosian. I think that's going to be the pairings, and obviously John Merrill will have something to say about that in the third pair. He's still under contract and still part of the group, but I think the Spurgeon Middleton. I think Middleton was at his best when he was at Spurgeon, and they both. I know they've been some injuries back and forth, but they're going to probably do that, and then have Brodin and Faber, who were terrific together, be a great anchor there. So that'd be my expectation going into things, and they could always flip flop the top two pairs where they have, Spurgeon go with Brodin or whatever, and Faber go with Middleton. But I think that's the way, in an ideal world, and no preseason injuries like there were last year, that would be what it is. Start the year.
As it sits right now, is that full group healthy and ready to start the season game one?
They are. I know Middleton had a small issue cleaned up early in the offseason. He signed his extension, of course. Jared Spurgeon has been skating, been working out locally, and Bill Guerin said yesterday he's on track and ready. The plan is for him to be ready to go for training camp, which is a great sign. Also, Marcus Foligno, he's coming off another core surgery. He's been working out and looking good. So, but the blue line, as far as we can tell, as long as Zach Bogosian didn't get injured, singing at Alex Killorn's wedding in Napa Valley, I think he should be okay too. So I think overall the blue line, as of now, should be in good shape physically as of this taping of this podcast.
You got to think one of these days there's going to be like wedding clauses thrown into these contracts. Like, if you get buckled at your buddy's wedding over the summer and hurt yourself, like contract revoked, done.
Is it the new skiing kind of thing? Like, can't ski, you can't do this. Like, no, you can't rage at your buddy's wedding. Like the mosh pit's off limits, or you can't do this, or like,
yeah.
I think it was like skeet shooting or something like that too. Like I saw they were shooting somewhere. Like it just, I don't know. I'm all for going all out at weddings. I think that's the best party you'll ever have in your life, as you know, unless you're a part of a cup party, kind of thing. So I think I'm all for friends doing that. And the videos are priceless of guys, tarps off, the dance floor singing in some ritzy Napa Valley place, for a wedding. So, but yes, those things can result in injuries. I remember Hartman said he got tackled by Dumba at his wedding like last year. I'm like, that's all it takes is for Dumba, some friendly fire, to take out Ryan Hartman to start the season. So I survived mine unscathed, so I had no injuries after my wedding.
See, it's usually not the person whose wedding it is. It's usually like one or two of the buddies that end up getting in trouble. That's been my experience, at least. But it's an occupational hazard, no question, and especially when all the NHL players jam them into the summer. So like it's just rip, and hit a bunch of them. It just turns into a marathon. But no, hopefully, to your point, hopefully Bogosian came out unscathed from that. Power play quarterback. What are we thinking there to start the year?
That's a good question. I think that, Spurgeon was the kind of the incumbent right last year. And so I think when he came back, they put him back there a little bit. I think they're going to tinker and camp with that. I know Chisholm showed with his ability, he can play the power play. And obviously Brock Faber did the same. My instinct would be to kind of save a lot more of Faber's kind of time in for 5-on-5 and for PK, knowing how important that particular unit has been and how it's struggled. You can say the same thing for Spurgeon, right? Keeping him healthy, but I don't think you guys get injured on the power play too much. So I would let it roll through camp and see how it works. I mean, I think all three of those guys are capable of doing it. It's one thing that kind of can differentiate Chisholm from other guys that maybe other guys have maybe better in their defensive area of the game, that he won't be playing lockdown PK minutes. But I think the whole idea last year was, Faber was playing so many minutes because he was playing number one power play and number one PK. It was a lot on him. So I think it's more so of a wait and see approach. Ideally, you have one guy running all year, but I've been in the league long enough to know that you can switch that in and out depending on how the unit's doing. If they're struggling, you go to 5 forwards, whatever. You just know that Kirill and Zuccarello and Boldy will be on that unit, and Erickson Ek will be in front of the net getting his head smashed. So I think the other piece might be rotating depending on how things go.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of, like you said, we got to see how it plays out and see who clicks, but they need to give Chisholm every opportunity to hold that spot for the reasons you said. I completely agree. Let them focus their time, Spurgeon and Faber, that is, on 5-on-5 and penalty killing minutes. And I do think Chisholm just brings a different element there. Like, it's not to say that Spurgeon and Faber aren't just as, if not more skilled, but there's a different way of playing the game. There's a different way of seeing the offensive zone that I think Chisholm has the potential there to really break in with and get meaningful power play minutes when he's going to be playing more sheltered third pairing minutes at 5-on-5. But we'll see how it clicks in, training camp, because that's all that matters. And
it reminds me a little bit of Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa, where he was playing kind of third pairing minutes. He got some second power play time and he got some confidence, got more of, touches with the puck and got to get some a little more or juice there, and that kind of led to his 5-on-5 play. So I don't know. I think they can't go wrong in either of those directions. I mean, obviously, second power play unit doesn't play very much, so the guy who runs the first one will be out there primarily, and it'll basically kind of see what Kirill thinks and what that group does, who they do it best with. But I'm all in thought of, like, let's say Faber doesn't have to change or doesn't have to be a PowerPoint producer to justify the contract that they just gave him. Like, if he's a shutdown number one defender, top in 5-on-5, and the penalty kill goes from 30th to 15th, then I think they'll be very happy.
Yeah. Well, let's pause real quick then. We're going to kick it over to our interview with Paul Martin. On the other side, we do have a couple more Minnesota Wild topics that we're going to cover, so stay tuned. But here we go. Let's kick it over to Paul. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us by way of Elk River, Minnesota. And honestly, too many accolades to do them all justice, but a few that Minnesotans will love. State tourney participant, Mr. Hockey Award winner, All-American, and back-to-back national champion as a member of your Minnesota Golden Gophers, along with endless accolades in the NHL and at the international stage. Paul Martin. Thanks for jumping on with us, Paul.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And we always open talking to people about the obscure, unique, whatever we want to label it, Minnesota Wild logo. I don't know for you, because you've seen a lot of things, played a lot of places. Have you seen a more unique logo than the Minnesota Wild logo?
Sometimes it's hard to tell. Maybe some unis that aren't as in line. Like, at the same time, haven't been paying too much attention to jerseys. Like, and I'm an old, like, a North Star fan. I grew up with the N and the star, and so having the Wild come back, being somewhat biased already, like, it was a hard time to get used to the new Wild logo. And I think, like, it's grown on me to the point where I don't see it as obscure maybe as I used to. I like the Kraken one. I couldn't. Sometimes it's hard to when you make out what exactly what it is that maybe that they should go back to the drawing board. But
well, as you know, this is a Fellowship of the Rink podcast, so a playoff of Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, but we were curious if you have any kind of nerddom or nerd itches you kind of go through, or like any kind of like movie series or book series or anything like that. Do you collect cards or anything like that? That's kind of your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I used to collect cards for sure growing up. I mean, I've seen all of the Lord of the Rings films. Like, I am a big sci-fi guy, so I definitely was hooked into those. Like, growing up, it was like the Chronicles of Narnia, all that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely down for that kind of entertainment for sure. Lately, not as much so as far as where my tastes have taken me. I'm more of a music guy and in the concert realm, but I definitely like a good sci-fi. I was watching, I can't think of what I was watching the other day, but similar along the lines of Lord of the Rings series. So, I enjoy that for sure.
I think we'll start with the Minnesota Gophers, the back-to-back championships. And I was told to ask how you cut your finger before the 0-2 title game.
How I cut my finger. Yeah. So that was, after the celebration. Yep. So, when the gloves come off, we were all celebrating, and I think it was Pat O'Leary thought he was really excited and came up, jumped behind me and smacked me into the group. And like, I think I just ended up being on the the other end of a hit, and then somehow someone stepped on my finger. So I'm lucky that it was just a long cut and not anything else, but it made the photo look really cool. Like, bleeding along those lines. So that it's definitely not as cool of a story as if it happened like playing the game, but we can, don't tell anybody.
And how do you guys celebrate after 03? Like, where did you guys get beers in Buffalo?
Yeah, 03. I think it was intentional. They didn't want us sticking around Buffalo. So they got us right onto the flight, but we were fortunate to have some alumni that were there. Jordan Leopold, not to name any names, that I think had secured some beer and provisions to make it an enjoyable ride back, and probably right to I think now it's the KK Club, college club, but it used to be the library where we used to hang out and spend some time. So yeah, a lot of great memories, a lot of fun.
And we were talking before we jumped into the recording about how awesome it is that Team Minnesota takes down the first ever PWHL title, but it just hits me in a bad way, Paul, that literally the last men's championship in anything was that back-to-back run for you guys. Like that, how do we fix this?
Well, definitely don't have the answers, but I align with your frustration, especially with, the quality of teams that, we're capable of having, especially to compete with other leagues, which is it's great to see the women have that championship, especially there's some former Gophers there that I've worked with and been able to coach, and just to see them have success. And Darwitz and our goalie coach, Brendan Pottersay, was helping them too, as far as the U of M connection. So it's just fun to see the championship in Minnesota for the girls and get some of that notoriety and even just the game growing in general. And for all the other young girls to be able to see, those possibilities is huge. But you're right. Like, I guess maybe, the Timberwolves, that was tough too. They get you all excited. They definitely were in most games until the end. So it's tough to see, when you don't get a bone every once in a while.
I know obviously hockey is what you're known for, but like you played other sports coming up, like, you're probably one of the better athletes come from the area. People mentioned like Joe Mauer and Winfield, all this like that. Like, what were your other non-hockey favorite sport that you got, in high school and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I loved football. Football was one of probably my favorite sports. Friday nights under the lights. Also basketball. We were the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade state basketball champs in Elk River. I didn't play hockey my eighth grade year. I played basketball. All my friends were basketball guys. But I missed hockey too much. We had a pond behind our house and started skating, and realized that hockey was, if I was going to go anywhere, hockey was going to be my sport or my avenue, obviously. So that turned out well. But in baseball, we made it to the state tournament in baseball. My senior year, we lost to Joe Mauer in the Cretin-Durham. In Cretin-Durham, he had an opposite field home run, I think in extra innings or end of the game to beat us. So yeah, I just enjoyed, I was fortunate to have parents that encouraged me to play other sports, and growing up and not really specialize until I needed to, which I think made me a better all-around athlete in hockey in general. So those were kind of the four main sports, a little bit of track for a couple of years. So definitely ways to stay in shape.
I just wish that lacrosse was the thing back then too, so you could have played that.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's starting to kind of take over a little more movement than say baseball, for young kids. So yeah, that would have been great to try it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the trick? Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought that we were going to be past this by now with how the Big Ten has thrived in hockey, but people are still just beyond upset that the WCHA does not exist anymore. Like, talk about the old days of the WCHA. Do you miss it as much as all the fans, or do they just need to get over it and embrace the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the option, as far as we can't do really anything about it. But at the same time, we schedule some games that are, the old WC, when you have a Mankato or a Duluth or St. Cloud, which, really shows just how much those games bring, like the excitement and energy and the local flavor, as far as fans in Minnesota and the North Dakota games. So it's definitely missed. I think there's a different level of intensity when you play those teams, especially the interstate rivals in North Dakota, that you don't necessarily get for us when you're playing, Penn State or Michigan State. Some of, obviously they're big games and you approach it like they're big games, but as far as the competitive nature. And I think the game's evolved too, or the league over time, as far as the more skill. And it used to be a lot more physical, than it is now. But I definitely miss those days where, even the parity in the league was, the Michigan Tech. If you didn't show up, those were sometimes the tougher games to play. So luckily we get to schedule a couple of the non-conference games with some big rivals that get interesting. But yeah, definitely miss the good old days, we'll call them.
What's the transition been like for you to kind of go from playing career, and now you're coaching, grad assistant? Are you still in school? I wasn't sure if you finished up your everything yet, but like, what's that transition like? What got you into this kind of role?
Yeah, good question. I think I was pretty fortunate to fall into it after my career ended. I took some time in California to figure out what I wanted to do. I had a tough time, transitioning after hockey, what's next. And luckily I didn't finish school. So they had that opportunity for me to come back and earn my degree, my undergrad. And then some other players had taken some time being a grad assistant, which I have done the last three years, and then earned my master's in youth developmental leadership, which has been a great experience. I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people. And this last year was more of a player development role, but what it was called, but it's basically doing the same thing that we do. So it's kept me close to the game, obviously to my alma mater, where, I love and really cherish that space for my experience, and just, hope to provide the same kind of atmosphere that I had, when guidance for the guys that I had when I was there, with the staff. And obviously we've had a little bit of success and a lot of fun. So it's kept me in the game and close to it. And I love kind of going to the rink every day. It's been enjoyable couple of years, but I'm done with school now and not sure what kind of the cards hold next.
I ran into you just over a year ago in Tampa, where, hopes were very high, had an unfortunate finish. And I'm sitting there with my dad and my brother-in-law, who are not traditional hockey guys. Like, they just kind of got into it because of me and my brother. And they looked at me like partway through the second period, they're like, oh my God, we're going to lose this game, aren't we? Like, you watching all of it unfold, like, what was the flow of the game? Like, where did it all get lost? Like, when did you know that things were kind of taking the wrong turn?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were so many Gopher fans there, like 3/4, and like you could see some of the energy, which I think just in general, like you talked about, affects some of the decisions made. I think for us, when coach put us into a 1-3-1, which we really didn't work on that much during the year, which is more of a defensive structure, and our forwards, the most offensive and skilled team in the league. It could have been one of the best college teams ever. You had 5 of the players off that team playing in the NHL regularly at the next year. And we didn't have that in our national championship teams, So I think to have them try to figure out a different way to play hockey at that time was tough for the guys, putting forward skating defense, and they stopped moving their feet. And so there was kind of a shift in the energy when we did that, and then obviously a penalty late, which is a tough call to make in that situation. And for Quinnipiac, who you got to give them credit, they played a really good system. That's how they play, an older team and stronger and faster. And they just kept to it, and we didn't seem to find a way to weather the storm and to kind of get any of that momentum back as one of those teams. And it's kind of tough because it's like, you have something really special. And then when it doesn't pan out the way it is, it's easy to point fingers and look at things. But I think that was a turning point in the game and the overall energy of what we were doing.
I know it was like pointed out, like who was on the ice to start overtime, right? Or Faber in the top line. But like, I know you guys have started different lines in different periods. But like that was really good executed play by them, and that start overtime. Did you see that in pre-scout at all? That the almost like a kind of a set play a little bit.
Yes, I mean, I think it's something that we would have seen or recognized. Obviously, one of the guys fell down, but I think it also is like we probably hadn't, when you go back into the 1-3-1 and you're not used to running it regularly, and then a face-off comes, sometimes it's not secondhand nature. It's like you have to think, and we have some players heading outside the dots or doing things that maybe uncharacteristically they don't do. So in that big of a game, and where you kind of want to be consistent with how you're playing, I think it was tough for guys to, more thinking than just playing at that time. And they made a good play. So.
Yeah. You mentioned 5 guys NHL, 5 really good, rookies last year too. Like Faber, I know you got a chance to work with him a lot. Just what stuck out to you the most watching him as a rookie in the league, as somebody who's played in the league for a long time and knows how challenging that position is for there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just certain players, just have it, all the tools for the most part of playing at an elite level for an extended period of time. And with him, like even though, which is so crazy to think about, he didn't play in the power play for the Gophers, didn't really get that much opportunity, and he has his feet are quick and his brain is quick. So it's like for him, when things move faster, he gets better. And sometimes at the college level on a bigger sheet, you have a lot more time to think about what you're trying to do, what's the right play. And that's, I think, when guys who can see and move at high level, they can maybe not look like they're on the right wavelength. And for me, I always thought he was going to excel more at the next level as he goes, and maybe he would in college, which I think we saw last year, his ability to handle really fast, high-speed situations with the best in the league, just rise to that level because he has that inside of him already. So there wasn't really a lot that we, you teach players like that. It's more about like, okay, what do you see here? Like what you ask them questions, what are your thoughts? And a lot of the times they know the answers, and it's just kind of a reassurance thing and making decisions. And it's been fun to watch him have the success he's had, especially here in his home state. And I'm sure that'll continue.
Is it weird having a Canadian on the roster next year?
We got a couple goals. We had a goalie this last year.
I suppose with close. Yeah, I don't know. I don't connect the goalie sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they don't count. We don't count them either. So it's it's interesting. I mean, back when we played was one of the first years where like Potolny came from Grand Forks, so technically not a Minnesotan, and we had Peter Kennedy come in. So there's been times in the Gopher history where players are come in and represent other places. So yeah, it's weird to think about because it's kind of ebbed and flowed, but I'm sure the guys will welcome him with open arms. He might receive a few jabs here and there. But it is interesting to see because we consistently have all the Minnesota players, which is kind of cool that it's still continuing.
Yeah, but I mean, what kind of impact is a guy like Matthew Wood going to have on this roster?
Yeah, I mean, talking about your top end caliber players, to be alongside the likes of, Jimmy Snuggerud, and depending where coach decides to put him, obviously. But yeah, like we haven't really used the portal that much because usually we have like the players that we have, and it's just changed the landscape with basically the free agency now, where you almost have to compete a little bit to make your roster better. And that seemed kind of like a no-brainer as far as somebody, I think I'm just speaking for myself, not the rest of the coaching staff, but to be able to, bring in Wood and have an immediate impact to the team.
Because you had a really good top line last year. Like even though people compare it to the line from the previous year, like you had some really top end guys, and Oliver Moore is a guy, a lot of hype coming in. How did you see him kind of progress? And like, do you see potentially, I don't know how Wood fits in there, the whole thing, but like, how do you see him fitting in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't say too much with the forward lines. That's more of Coach Gordon, Coach, Motzko. I think I'll drop in at 2 cents, but for the most part, they do a good job of kind of figuring out what works through the first part of the season and who's clicking with who. But yeah, Moore was, as a freshman, really came in and established himself, whether it was Pitlick and Snuggie, or moving him around, which Bob likes to do. To get guys going. So he just has all the tools. I think for him, he moves so quick that sometimes it's, like slowing it down, which I think he'll learn as he goes, like that piece of it, because he wants to, be so fast and do so well and shoot so high. He has all of that ability. Now it's just kind of building off of his freshman year, which I think will have an even bigger impact next year.
And what's it like too? Because we've seen of late, a lot of guys are leaving college a lot earlier than, certainly back when you were playing. Were you surprised at all to see Jimmy Snuggerud come back for his third year? And like, how did that all kind of unfold?
Yeah, good question. I mean, maybe a little bit like, and being part of that process, it's such a difficult situation to manage because you want the kids to be able to make decision for themselves, because ultimately it's their decision what they want to do. Like for me, I wanted to stay, after my sophomore year. I technically wanted to stay after my junior year, but there was going to be a lockout the following year, and I'd been playing in the minors. We won 2 champs. So there's so many factors that go into it. And I think the biggest thing is what you want to do. And so you're getting advice from your advisors or agents, your family. There's obviously pressure from the NHL club, as far as you're going to have playing time right away at the end of the year, and you'll be right in the lineup next year, which obviously is not always the case. So it's hard to kind of tell somebody what to do when they have to make the decision for themselves. But Jimmy took time, really, laid it out and thought what was best for him. I know he loves the guys here in the university, an opportunity to be more of a leader of the club. I know education's important to him, and a player that shoots the puck like that and moves like that isn't going to have an issue when the time comes for him. Another year under his belt, I think you'll have an even easier transition. And these are just my opinions. You never really know, right? But, in another year of maturity, because and that's the hard part, thinking as a young kid like Jimmy, like if I don't take this, I'm not going to get another chance or opportunity. And it's kind of like, Brock Faber was the first round to LA, and he didn't go the 1 year, and they traded him to the Wild, and like, look how he did. There's so many things that you cannot control or have the power to control, like whether you get traded, who they bring into your organization. So that's why it ultimately falls back to Jimmy. And I think he felt connected to the guys and wanted to come back one more year and give it one more shot, at a championship with this group of guys, and an opportunity to just mature a little more and have some fun.
I know you're big on leadership, and you have those talks with the players through the course of the season. You brought in speakers and everything like that. And I was curious what kind of the state of the leadership group is right now. You have Kester coming back. I know you lost a lot of influential guys the last couple of years, but Jimmy's coming back. Where do you see kind of that group going right now, where in terms of you feel like there's a number of guys that you may be surprised you stepped up in that leadership role that is pretty much needed for this group?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our work with the leadership group, like the first year or two, was we're a little more hands-on, a little bit more information for them. I think, when you have like Brock Faber is one of the best leaders I've been around, even in my, playing career as a young man, and for him to kind of set the pace. And like Ben Myers was the year before him, and also like a very good leader when it comes to by example, and also kind of motivating the guys and keeping them connected. And so then you kind of pass the torch each year. And so for guys like Mason Nevers and Mike Kester, are two also of the best and really represent what Gopher hockey is all about, on and off the ice. Two examples of what it means to be servant leaders for the program. Will do a great job, and depending who steps up, whether it's, the Huglins or Pitt and, Snuggie, Chesley, Kel Thomas. A lot of guys are really good leaders, even though they're not going to be wearing a letter. So I think it's in a good state, and they do such a good job of monitoring where the team's at from week to week, and how to correct anything that needs to be better, and also what's going well. And it's just, I sometimes get amazed at how well they do without us, helping them out, but it's fun just to be there and give them some guidance if they need any. But it's, we're leaving the program in good hands this year with our leadership.
I got to ask selfishly, because you already commented on my jersey before we jumped on here. Grew up a Penguins fan. I wasn't as fortunate as you with having the North Stars around for my early days in hockey. Why did you sign with Pittsburgh over LA?
It's a really good question. I think the easiest answer is they just had more of a pedigree of winning at that point. They had just won a cup a year prior, and the caliber of players that they had was a really good core to have that opportunity again. LA really wasn't established yet, and nobody knew who Quick in net was, who ended up being one of the, better goalies to get between the pipes. So it's just one of those things. You make the best decision at that time with the information that you have, so, looking back, to have 2 cups in LA would be great, and probably some warmer weather, a better tan. But, I loved being in Pittsburgh and some friends to this day. So it was, that was the decision.
When you got the warmer weather and better tan with San Jose, how weird, if at all, is it to like play against the Penguins, who you spent several years with in the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah, I don't know if it gets more weird than that. It's especially when you have, friends of 5 years battling out for the Stanley Cup, which was really difficult. Like I didn't realize how tough it would have been, after the loss and the second guessing or questioning of, that could be you, that kind of stuff, right? Which is never does anyone any good, but it's still like when you feel like, we have measuring sticks as, what you are as a pro, 1,000 games, Stanley Cup, et cetera, and not being able to achieve that is something I think a lot of guys, whether they admit it or not, is tough. And then to lose against a good group of guys, if it was going to be any and be them, but also just some that was definitely difficult to go through.
You obviously play with a lot of tremendous players in your life. I mean, Sidney Crosby has to be probably 1 or 1A or 1B at this point. Very few people can get him to open up, unless you're on Spin Chicklets podcast, I guess. But like, what's your favorite Sidney Crosby story or memory or moment that many people didn't see, besides from like down the ice, big goals or moments, like the Sid behind the scenes that people don't know?
Yeah, I mean, Sid, for how prepared he is and how hard he works, he does have a really good sense of humor and ability to bring guys together and make them feel welcome. He's one of the best I've seen at making time and space for autographs and for kids. And I'm sure he learned a lot of that from Mario, who is also a very genuine human being for how big of a superstar they are. But like for me, like he's superstitious, so he'd always have to do something for each game, and sometimes it required flipping tape and it had to land a certain way, and he usually would get it but sometimes it would take a while, so you'd have to wait for him to finish doing certain things before you could kind of continue on with your with your routine. And for a while I had to do his fighting strap, so that was my claim to fame in Pittsburgh, I think, is they found somebody else to do it and win the Stanley Cups. But for a while, I think that's why I was there, just to make sure his fighting strap was tightened. I don't know if he ever had to use it, so it probably was useless. He probably didn't need me.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like Joe said, you played with a lot of really interesting characters. I mean, easy ones off the top: Evgeny Malkin, Joe Thornton. Like across all of it, like who would you say was the most interesting person you played with? And do you have any good stories you could throw for that individual?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, really. Like Brent Burns, who I played with and won the Norris one of those years I was with him. He used to be here for the Wild and had all the snakes or whatnot. But once he had kids, he kind of had to get rid of the snakes. But definitely a unique individual. And I just recall his yell on the ice that he's always open, so like anytime you don't pass it, you'd hear this scream, and you'd have to make sure you get him the puck. But, it's interesting because those guys are all to me like bigger than the game. And Joe Thornton, who obviously has a tremendous amount of skill and points, but just his leadership and his like goofy nature, like just a man child, a kid in the locker room, which the love of the sport. Those guys, I think, have the most success that separates them apart is because of their love of the game. The Joe Pavelski's out there before every game and tipping pucks, and he'd be the first one to tell you, like, he can't skate. He's never been a great skater, but he's one of the most accomplished American-born players in the game because of how diligent he is at getting to the front of the net and his stick ability at tipping pucks. So, and it's the thing that sets them apart, even though they're very unique, is just their the type of people they are, really good humans, good men, and treat their good leaders. That's why they wear the letters, because they're able to, bring the guys together, motivate them and have some fun too. So that's what I miss the most. I don't miss chipping pucks off the glass or, grinding it out for 82 games and getting beat up. I miss the guys in the locker room and having fun. I think Joe was always one of the singers in the shower too. He loved to carry a tune and sing. I don't know if his voice was very good, but just those kind of things that you forget and where you're playing a game and how much fun it is to be around him.
What was exactly in Brent Burns' backpack? Did you ever show you all this stuff? I guess there's a coffee machine in there somewhere. There's something else. Like, I don't know, like certain vitamins, or what was in this backpack?
Yeah. I mean, he'd be doing great now in like the NIL world, where like he had so many people that would send him stuff because he'd be using different products, for promotion and stuff like that. But he'd have coffee, different protein bars. He'd have bands, all kinds of stuff that he would use. He was on the ARP for a little bit. which is a training device. And I never looked in there. Probably maybe a knife or something. He owns a ranch down in Texas, so he's probably got the hunting stuff. But yeah, I didn't ever really gander in there too often. But I don't know.
Man, how's your golf game?
I'm actually getting a little bit better. I'm like I was 2 years ago, not very good. I didn't golf much unless they were like charity fundraisers. And then I joined the club and started taking lessons, and I'm like a 8 right now, handicap. So for me, that's the best I've ever been. And so I actually enjoy golf because I can find my ball on most occasions. It not be an enjoyable thing to do for 4 hours, but it's been a lot better. You guys golf?
There's an effort. I don't know if I'd call it golf. I'm doing a lot more looking.
Okay.
I think if I get one or two good shots around, keeps me coming back, keeps me motivated to be like, okay, I can still do this. Or like if I can play a whole round with just one ball, like that's a win for me. Like not lose any. So that'd be. But it's fun. I mean, Minnesota too in the summertime. It's a beautiful weather. It's perfect time to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we'll wrap on our final question here on that topic, Paul. Final question brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Paul, if you were going to formulate, including yourself, your ideal golf foursome, who would it be? And it can be guys you've played with. It can be celebrities, dead or alive.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Wow. That's you should prep me there like this. How do you do that on the spot? Do you guys have yours? What's yours?
Ooh. I mean, I'll cheat here a little bit and say one that I just feel like has to be done that no one's said yet. I want in character Happy Gilmore and Shooter McGavin.
Yes.
I want them in the same cart together. Actually, no, I want Shooter in my cart. I'll have Happy in the other one. And for my final person to round it out,
Chubbs.
I mean, Chubbs would be good, but I don't know how I would not bring in Phil Kessel. There's some element he's going to add to it, and he is. I'm convinced he's the most interesting human out there. I know that I'll never have a chance to have a conversation with him because the second he's done with hockey, he is just going to slink into the abyss, much like Dustin Byfuglien. But I think that's the group that I would wrangle together.
Yeah, that's a good group. That's a tough one. I mean, I think it'd be fun to golf with an elite golfer, just how good they are, like a Tiger Woods or a Scotty Scheffler, just for fun, I would also I'm a huge Woody Harrelson fan. I think it'd be fun to see him or like a Matthew McConaughey for some, some one-liners or whatever. And I'm pretty fortunate. I feel like if, it was Jumbo or the hockey guys, I'd be able to find some time to golf with them, but like a Wayne Gretzky would be cool, or something like that, just to kind of round out a foursome.
Nice.
Yeah, off the top of my head. And I'm a big music guy. Like I'm a big Fish guy. Like Trey, he's but he's not a golfer, so like it wouldn't be the same kind of around, But yeah, like a Keith Richards or Mick J, like those guys, but they're not golfers. So I don't know if I'd want to bring them on the golf course, right?
You know what? I'm not good at golf. I'm good at sitting in a cart, driving around and having beers. Like,
okay,
everyone's got their role. Everyone's got their role.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or I'd mind bringing my grandpa back. I miss him, and he'd be fun to hang out with one more time. So,
nice.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that.
Okay, well, tell you what. To be fair, we'll bring you back on closer to the start of the Gopher season.
Okay,
you'll have plenty of time to think about your redux of this.
Okay, I appreciate it for sure.
Yeah. No, but thanks for taking the time. I'm glad you weren't already at a cabin or cottage this weekend. I know it's a typical Minnesota thing to be out and about, but looking forward to hopefully catch up to you again. And maybe we'll pop by the, I don't know when the alumni tournament is, right? The Gopher alumni, is that in early August you guys do?
Yep, early August, I think, second Tuesday maybe. I'm not sure on the date, but yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, come on out. It'll be good to see you.
Who runs the show there? Who's the best golfer when the alumni comes back and plays?
That's a good question. I'm not even sure who would be. There's quite a few. The Hankinsons are really good golfers. I'm not sure who the current guys that are any good. Mike Kester, maybe. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. It's just fun to get everybody together. So
How's Jordan Leopold? Is he pretty good?
he's okay. He can hit the ball. Not as good around the greens.
We'll have to nudge him with that one. He gave us some few questions to ask you today, so I figured give you a chance to shoot back at him a little bit. So
yeah, there you go.
Well, thanks again for coming on. Good talking to you. Enjoy your summer, and hopefully we'll catch up again later in the summertime before the season starts again.
Sounds good. I appreciate you having me on. Guys, take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think either of us can say it any better than him. Clearly, Faber, we should have given him more money, right?
Yeah, I think he should have. Yeah, if he was up to his endorsement, he could have got more money. Clearly, but I love Paul Martin's. Like, I remember I texted Jordan Leopold. I'm like, hey, give me some good questions to ask Paul Martin. You know, he's about dyeing his hair. Talk about like we had mentioned, like the bar after the national championship game where they celebrated from, and his injuries and stuff like that, and he played through. So definitely thanks to Jordan Leopold for those good questions for Paul Martin, his good buddy, who obviously a Minnesota overall legend, but Minnesota Gopher legend for the championships. They won there, and obviously they're trying to bring it back with the group. He was really insightful to just like on this year's team on Wood and what he brings and where that element comes, and talking to guys like the Stuggaroos and them about coming back or staying. So, and I know we had to ask him about the overtime from the championship game a couple of years ago, and he gave a pretty good answer, I thought. So, you know, no answer is going to please any Minnesota fans, but
it was the Dean Evason answer, though, right? Like he just like said what we're all thinking. Like I'm thinking similar things, and he's like, "No, this is what it is." So
yeah.
I appreciate that. All right, I know there's a couple other things that you wanted to hit on, Joe. Namely, it's starting to become more real. Whispers are becoming sentences. Patrik Laine, what do we know? Join us in the Brainerd Lakes area this Labor Day weekend for the CRMC Championship presented by Gertens at Cragen's Legacy Courses. Last year's PGA Tour America's Tournament of the Year kicks off Thursday, August 30th, with free admission for everyone. VIP tickets are available and could go fast, so do not wait to claim access to 3 hospitality areas that have your food and beverage needs covered. Last year, Faber, Shaw, Addison, and Walker were out in full force supporting their teammate and one of your favorite Minnesota Wild players in Matt Boldy. Who knows which Wild players you might run into this year, not to mention 2-time Stanley Cup champion Sean Chambers getting in on the action. Don't miss the Saturday Night Jam on the 18th green featuring The Hype. This is your chance to watch the next PGA Tour superstar right here in Brainerd, Minnesota. For more information, visit crmcchampionship.com. Well,
we do know he has been released from the NHLPA Player Assistance Program, which he entered after he had the setback in his injury, shoulder injury with Columbus last year. So now he's available to talk to potential teams that would be interested in acquiring him. He's made it clear that he'd like a fresh start. Maybe the new coach, Dean Evason, and new GM might change that. But clearly, I think Don Waddell is going to look for different options there, and there are going to be people on the market who will be interested in him. Now, on the surface, you think he'd be a really good fit for the Minnesota Wild, a team that looks for secondary scoring, a team that would like to have another finisher there on the wing, and they do have some centers that could help facilitate that. The problem is there's no cap space, so it would require. I think the Wild would generally be interested in taking a chance on Patrik Laine. The problem is with like $1 million or less cap space, and he makes 8.8 and change. Columbus would have to eat half of it plus take on a couple contracts, kind of thing. So it's not just sending Freddie Gaudreau and a draft pick to Columbus for Laine. But as of this moment, from I gather that they haven't talked to Laine yet. I'm not sure if the other teams have yet. I know they were still just recently released from the program, but it wouldn't surprise me if they at least checked in on it. I just don't see a scenario. You start putting the dollars and cents together, even if you package like a Gustavsson and in Goudreau and a pick or whatever, you still need to get something else back. And they're not going to keep Merzlikins and Gustavsson. They don't want to keep all these goalies there too. So it's just hard to make the money work. There's a lot of teams like Anaheim, maybe Montreal, maybe Carolina, Seattle, I've heard too, might be interested. So I think it's intriguing because the Wild have been kind of kicking the tires on him since the draft. But then they spent, $4 million a year on Yakov Trenin too. That took away some of the cap space that they might have had to make it an easier transaction if they had maybe $4.5 million left versus under $1 million. So on the surface, if they make it work, could make it work miraculously. Do you like Laine as a fit on the Wild top six?
I guess I've got two versions of that answer. In a vacuum, yes, because he brings something that they lack, which is pure goal scoring talent. And I know like people want to talk about, he's been, he was an issue in Winnipeg, issue in Columbus. This is a little tongue in cheek, but he didn't want to be either of those places. Yeah. Like all that people talk about is how much people want to be in and play in Minnesota. Like it's a good place to live, great locker room. That can do a lot to change how a guy's playing. And if you get him playing with a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, that can certainly change your outlook on hockey in general. So I think it could work really well. We're getting back into the discussion, though, of are we further boxing out our prospects? And that's not like the be-all, end-all. That's not the reason you do or don't make this move. It way more comes down to, do you believe Laine is going to fit in and make a difference? Because he is next-level talent. He's shown it before. That's a game changer if things work. But we're already worried about there not being room for prospects. Now we're basically ensuring that we're probably not going to see any playing up with the team. Maybe one squeaks in to be a winger on your third line. So that's my big reservation. And yeah, there's risk with taking on a Patrik Laine. Depends on how the dollars shake out, how much money's going to be retained, whatever. But just on paper, it's hard not to look at that and be at least a little bit excited about the possibilities of how he could pop off.
Yeah. And again, it's still a very like a long shot, if at anything, but I think that those are the swings that, I don't think it's a huge risk. Like I see them, as long as it's like $4 million over in the next 2 years versus an $8.3 million, like in Columbus, we're all assuming that Columbus is going to eat half of that, and you're going to be trading a forward back in that deal. So it's not like you're adding another forward spot that you're losing.
Wow. Okay, but if it's Freddie Gaudreau that's going, is that really even opening up a spot? Because right now he's maybe fourth line, maybe press box. We don't know.
I mean, I don't think Gaudreau is going to take it. Yeah, I agree. Like there's two schools of thought. Like, hey, let's see where the prospects can fit in. Let's get Riley Heidt here right away. Let's see if he can play. There's also like Kirill Kaprizov would be a chance to sign a contract somewhere else coming up soon, and you want to be able to convince people, hey, we've talked waiting for years for this buyouts to be over with, and we can have this money to spend, and we can make a splash, and we can do whatever, and convince Kirill Kaprizov we can win a playoff series, right? So you have those two schools of thought. Yes, I think I would love to see Riley Heidt play, this year or whenever, but he's 19 years old. Let's not pretend he's going to come in here and dominate. Like he's still going to be a big part of this future of this franchise. If you have a chance to bolster your lineup and give yourself a puncher's chance of showing you can be a little more competitive and win a playoff series, and if your whole idea is to show Kirill Kaprizov that you can do that and convince him to stay, then that's very much as important as getting a certain guy reps this year. So that's like you're either spinning your wheels one way or the other way. Like which ways? And so like they're already in the middle here. They've been in the middle for a while, and there's with the way the division's set up, they're not going to be leapfrogging anybody anytime soon. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens, and that's obviously still a long shot, but I just think I can see why, in my belief, that the Wild would be willing to take a chance, assuming that there's miraculous money can work. But I just don't see a way with the other teams around won't have to take on as many contracts. Won't have to maybe he goes to Anaheim. They don't have to eat half of his salary, right? They can move somebody else.
Well, it depends on what they want in a return, though. Like you're not going to get nearly as much for Patrik Laine if you're not retaining. So that certainly comes into play. But I'm with you. Like I'm definitely like straddling that line. But I think if you do your due diligence, which anyone that's mad that Bill Guerin like wants to reach out, that's his job. Like he should be looking into it. Doesn't mean that he's going to pull the trigger on anything. And if he does decide that it's worth going for it, like, again, there's a lot of reasons that you can talk yourself into this being a really exciting move. I understand people's hesitation because there's been ups and downs with him and he's coming out of the, player assistance program, but I'm definitely more pro than against, but I can definitely see both sides as this shakes out.
Yeah, I can see the argument where if he decides to, that Guerin reaches out to him when he can, at least sees where he's at and see if it's worth the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, of trying to make these things kind of work. But I think Laine is only 26, 27 years old. Like this is not a 32-year-old reclamation project. So I think a team will be better having him on their roster next season, wherever it is.
And he's immediately the best pure shooter that the franchise has ever had. Like that's not even a discussion. So there's a lot to look at and be excited about. And I think he is a guy that could endear himself as a fan favorite if he like comes in and does the thing. Like he's a big bodied boy. He plays mean and
his personality is great too. Like his personality would be
no bullshit.
Yeah. With Middleton and those guys in there, I think he would fit pretty well. But that's how like we were talking about before, the Wild don't really have much cap space left. So their off season is pretty much for the most part done. And that's just a surprising thing on the woodwork. And like I said, like, I think, even with the Filip Gustavsson stuff, from what we've gathered, that I don't know if there's been a lot of steam on that this summer. Like I think there's been, I think they've been open to moving him, but they're not going to give him away. And I don't know if the goalie market just wasn't really quite there. It was kind of filled up early in the offseason with a lot of trades that were made and not really a lot of demand. Him coming off a rough year too. And quite frankly, like just look at it, like how many times have you seen a 22 young under goalie, even as good as they have, played 40 plus games in Wallstedt, or Marc-Andre Fleury at turning 40 in November, playing a lion's share. So
yeah, I don't want to trade him personally. I'm not on that boat.
You bet on, if one of the biggest downfalls last season was your goaltending. And I love Wallstedt's game and future. He's their number one in the making. There's nothing wrong with him getting some starts at the NHL level this year and maybe more time in the AHL, but then getting more starts. He's not going to be getting one start, and he'll be getting more than that this year. But what if Gustavsson is the guy he was 2 years ago, and all of a sudden your save percentage as a team?
I think he is.
I don't think he was the guy he was last year. Like, clearly, he may not be number 2 in the league in save percentage, but he's clearly not the guy he was last year. He's somewhere closer to, I think, the one from 2 years ago than he was the one from last year. So if you get him above league average, right? If you get above league average goaltending last year, they're talking about the Wild making the playoffs. So
when I know you guys have mentioned like him and Gaudreau like being the ideal package going over for Laine, why couldn't it be Gaudreau and Johansson? 2 players that Dean is familiar with, Dean likes. The money then works. Obviously, you're sending something else on top of that. You're not just sending those 2 for Laine straight up with half retained, but like I don't think Gustavsson needs to be included to make this work, if that's what the hang up is for some people. Because I do think the team is better for keeping him. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think they're trying to trade him. I think it's more so making the money work, and a guy who doesn't have a no trade clause, and a guy that, goalies are valuable, right? A guy that Dean's familiar with as well. So it's more so like they're not going to give away Laine for free, even if they have to retain some salary. So you're going to have to give away. I'm not sure who that prospect is, or that they want young players too. So you can't just dump all your veterans going off bad years and say, here you go, give us this, But
agreed.
So we'll see. But obviously a big day. My first day back from paternity leave. Faber signs an 8-year extension, so got my kicked the rust off there from my first story back. But yeah, we'll have a lot more coming this month on the futures with the prospects and the goaltending situation and all that. Going to the Beauty League hopefully tomorrow, and the next few weeks coming up to gather some stuff. But yeah, let's enjoy the rest of this Minnesota summer. It has been really hot. It's been hotter than I thought it'd be. I thought I left Florida, but apparently the last week it's been not as cool for my standards now that I live in Minnesota full time. But hey, there's worse things. So we'll be wanting these days in about 2 months, right? Or 3 months. We'll be wanting these days back, shoveling our driveways.
Yeah, that's a fact. Ugh. But yes, anything else you want to hit on, Joe, or are we wrapping it?
I think we're wrapping. Just thanks for everybody for all their feedback and questions in the mailbag. We'll have another mailbag episode in August. A couple more guests lined up for that month too. So we'll just keep it rolling. And any other feedback you guys have, drop it on the bottom of the YouTube channel, or send me or Scott a message or a reply on Twitter or to our posts. And any guests you would like to see on here. I know we're working on some decently good sized ones here coming up in August, but just give us a holler. Love to give people what they want, right? Otherwise, just enjoy.
Give people what they want.
Yeah.
Gotta. No, appreciate everyone. And I know every week we've got more and more listeners. So if this is your first listen, welcome. We appreciate you. Hopefully we didn't disappoint you. Anyone that hasn't already, whether it's subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, like, we appreciate you so much for doing so. And as Joe mentioned, there is some YouTube action for those of you that are more into video, whether it's clips, full interviews, highlight reels, you name it. We've got it all over at the SodaPod YouTube channel. But we will see you all next week. We appreciate you tuning in this week for the latest installment of Fellowship at the Rink. You stay classy, stay to hockey.